Hello, you're hearing the voice of Callum Williams. I'm a senior economics writer at The Economist. We've had a bit of a technical difficulty. My webcam has broke about 5 minutes before we were due to come on. So I apologise for that. But you're really here to see and to hear from Mark from IWG, who did a very interesting panel earlier today. Please do send in your questions. I'm going to abuse my position as the compere here to ask one to Mark, and welcome, Mark, to this conference. And sorry again, I'm not visible.
Thanks.
What I would be really interested to hear about, just a bit more, I guess, is about how you guys are supporting people who are still working from home. You mentioned a big deal you had done with Standard Chartered. So if you know, what kind of services is IWG giving to people who actually haven't gone back into the office yet?
Well, look, it's people that work from home need basic services. They need an IT help desk with break fix. Look, the whole issue of working from home is it's all okay if everything works well. So
Yes.
IT help desk, stationary deliveries, a help desk for just getting things done, virtual secretary, so someone to do things for you that's available at times that you need it. Basic furniture. One of the biggest problems we've seen with many people working from home is they're quite literally working from their kitchen table.
Yeah.
Now, whilst it's all right to have breakfast on, it's not okay to be working 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a day. So, back problems and bad posture and everything else. So we also deliver furniture to people's homes on behalf of companies. So it's trying to make the home workplace a professional workplace.
I didn't realize that. So you're as much a kind of office services company as you are sort of a company that provides actual physical space. I'm going to move on now to the questions that have come from the audience, if that's all right. Now, one of the big kind of disagreements that I've spotted over the past 4 days is about sort of relates to productivity. So the question is this: is there a detrimental impact, in your view, to productivity due to hybrid or flexible working?
Well, yeah, it's a very good question. Look, done well, no, there is, in fact, productivity can improve. So, effectively, companies have to invest in the right technology, and it's available everywhere. Microsoft Teams, Google have the technology to allow workers to work productively from home or anywhere. They need to be trained, doing creative work, doing collaborative work, more difficult when people are remote, but certainly if a company invests in training, it is something that can work very well. Generally speaking, productivity does not go down. In fact, it can improve, and certainly the speed of getting things done using modern technology means that business can, there's a leap forward, in fact, in productivity because people aren't meeting all the time for unnecessary things. They're just meeting when it's really important.
That's interesting. I guess that sort of links to the next question, which is hybrid working and flexible working just for COVID-19, or you think, or is it something that's going to stick afterwards?
Well, if we go back to a time pre-COVID-19, so towards the end of 2019, beginning of 2020, there was already a very strong move by larger companies to move to hybrid and flexible working. And the reason for that then was that it's what people want. It's what workers want. Workers don't want, in a digital world, not all workers want to be forced to commute long distances in their own time to go to a workplace which they really don't need to be at. So, and from a company's point of view, the cost of housing people in large work centres in a digital world really makes no sense. I mean, there's huge savings if you give workers what they want, which is the ability to work near where they live or at home, and have less space in central points. So that was happening anyway. COVID-19 has massively accelerated the adoption of this, forced adoption pretty much globally by every company. It will stick afterwards. It will take time because companies have to lose the space they have. They can't automatically just get out of the lease space or the own space that they have, but over time they will, and you will get a continuous move in the next 2-3 years to a much, much more flexible workplace. Final thing, actually, Callum, here is the ESG, the environment overall, is very high up on companies' agendas these days. And again, the best way you can fulfill your carbon commitments is by reducing the amount of office space you occupy and stop people commuting. That can make a big difference if you employ lots of people, and that is really the third powerful driver. So it's going to stick afterwards, and it will, in 3 years' time, it will be the norm, not the exception.
I want to just come back on something you mentioned a couple of times in your answer just then, and you actually also mentioned it a few times in your panel session earlier. I guess it's not even really a question; it's more of a comment. But you seem to you seem sort of, I guess in your view, commutes are like a really bad thing, right? You don't seem to like commutes very much at all. Is it your view really that kind of whatever can be done to reduce commuting time is basically quite a good thing for people?
Well, yes. I mean, look, I think you'd be hard to press to find someone who said, well, look, I really enjoy commuting. Look, it's okay occasionally, but to have to do it every day in the middle of winter on a rainy station platform in freezing conditions, you don't see many people smiling on the platform.
No.
And if it's in the United States, I mean, one of the highest impact you see from COVID-19 is actually where commutes are bad. So, in the other extreme, California, worst affected part of the United States geography is California. And that's because the commutes are so bad, houses are larger, people have space to work from home, but they just don't want to commute. So it makes no sense either from a time point of view. I mean, if you commute into, say, London, that's costing you perhaps £5,000 a year or more.
Yeah.
Of after-tax cost. It makes no sense to travel all that way to, normally carrying your laptop and your mobile phone with you in your case to then open it somewhere else and use it. It just doesn't make sense. And so commuting is just not popular. So it will still happen, but it will be dramatically reduced. People will commute maybe 2 days a week instead of 5 days a week.
That's very interesting. I've got a couple of questions here about IWG's strategy itself. One question, which again you sort of alluded to in the panel session, was how the company's real estate will change or might change as a result of the pandemic. And so the question is, which locations and spaces will be key focus areas for IWG?
Well, for us, this is, again, it's not something that's new, but it's something that's got more emphasis during COVID-19, and that is a move into the provinces, a move into the suburbs. I mean, we have for 30 years been opening up in the suburbs and smaller towns and cities. That is the majority of our growth now, and has been for a while. But we're basically ramping up that growth to provide more professional workplace near where people live. It's undersupplied at the moment, but it's what people want. People want to be able to walk, cycle, or short car journey down the road to work. A lot of people can't or don't want to work from home, or are unproductive at home for a whole variety of reasons. They want a local workplace. Companies are accepting that now, but it needs to be professional. It can't be in a converted farmyard. It needs to be a professional building, so no productivity is lost.
So I just want to dive in on that a bit. So you're saying that before the pandemic, there was a sort of relative shift of focus in your company away from the sort of biggest city centres. So what was going on there? Is that part of that movement away from people wanting to commute and all that kind of thing? Or what was going on then?
Absolutely. It was the beginnings of it. Look, it's been a demand driven shift in the company from when we started the business, and in the early years it was all city centres. But in the last 10 years, but certainly much more so in the last 3 years, that's been extended to the suburbs, and the majority of the growth, and I'm talking 75% of our growth would be into the suburbs or smaller towns and cities. It's all about providing a network of places to work across a country.
Mm.
And more and more we're seeing local government or even national government wanting to work with us in establishing that. So it's sort of, you've got to think about this as part of the infrastructure, where we do a lot in France with local mayors, and mayors have a mandate to provide things in their local community that people need. And one of the things they need is a workplace. So, we've done a lot more in France than other countries, because you've got government policy actually behind it to say, look, we need to spread the work out in France to every part of the country, not concentrate it into Paris and the big cities. So, and I think there will be more of that. It's not just about supplying high quality internet bandwidth to homes. It's about providing a work infrastructure so people can simply work from anywhere.
Very interesting indeed. I guess a related question in terms of IWG's strategy is, can you give us a flavour of what a kind of IWG managed office might look like in maybe a year or 2 years' time compared to how it might have looked 10 years ago?
Well, they're quite different in that most of the new offices we will build ourselves, and that's
Okay.
mainly down to the fact we're building properties that are fully recyclable, because we are working to a zero carbon footprint, full recycling. And so we're building buildings that have a very low energy footprint. We're building buildings that are 15% more efficient. We build a building at the beginning so there's no waste. We're building it like you would put together an iPhone. It's got everything you need. We're not converting a building that was built for something else. So, the main thing is it's all now about sustainability. More and more of our customers, and I mentioned ESG a few moments ago,
Yeah.
this is high on the agenda. Yes, they want to reduce costs. Yes, they want to have the best HR policies. But in addition, and as part of what the company wants, their investors want, and in fact, what their workforce want, they want to make sure they're doing everything possible to have a low carbon footprint. And those buildings, those are the buildings we're putting into these suburban and more rural markets, where there are few buildings that would be suitable, and certainly almost none that would meet the right environmental criteria that we're looking at.
That is very interesting indeed. I've got a few questions now that are popping up in response to some of your previous answers. There's one here. It's a tiny bit longer than normal, but I'm gonna read it out. The question is this: does remote working truly assist environmental sustainability? I look at my home energy bills for the past year, and my costs, aircon and heating, are significantly up. Presumably, that's the same for all home workers. What do you make of that question?
Well, it's a good question again, but I'm trying to do the calculation in my head, but it's probably quite a simple one. One of the problems with office buildings, unlike your home, an office building is not occupied at the weekends, evenings. It's only occupied during work hours, but it's heated and it's cooled and it's operated, 24 hours a day, every day of the year. So, in the end, you would use a small amount of additional energy to heat your house, to cool your house, and so on. But that would be less than the cost of operating buildings for just part of the time. Secondly, on the compensating side, there is just less commuting, less miles, less kilometers covered in order to get to a workplace, and that would far outweigh the small cost of additional energy, because in the end you may lower your heating when you're not there at work, when you're at work, but you don't turn it off completely generally.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of quite marginal. So the benefits, office buildings are by definition quite inefficient in that they're oversized and they're not used all the time.
That's very interesting. I hadn't thought of it that way, but that's a very compelling answer. I guess a sort of another question, which is sort of in a sense related, is also in reference to one of your previous answers, which is to do with if we're in a world where we have a lot of remote work, a lot of hybrid work. The question is, what does that mean for company culture? Does it still matter in this world?
It absolutely matters. It matters more, much more. So, modern successful companies will have to put more effort into not just having a culture, but communicating that culture regularly to the team, the company's people. It's about, you have to curate it. It's not something that just is there. You have to actually work on getting people to be part of it. It's, jobs are going to have much more of a purpose. There has to be more trust between the company and its team, and it's going to be a different workplace, a much more, let's call it, a workplace that's not based so much on attendance. It's based much more on trust, output, and so on. Finally, companies will still have headquarters hubs or a headquarters, but the purpose of the headquarters is to have the name of the company above the door and to bring people together so a culture can be created. It'd be very hard for companies to operate successfully without ever bringing people together. So there is no camaraderie, there's no learning from others around you, and so on. So there's a whole new world coming, which is going to be based around technology and the companies that use the technology well, compared to those companies that don't. And but overall, all companies will have to invest more time, effort, and money into making sure that remote workers don't become dislocated workers, and you lose them or you lose their productivity. So there's a lot of technology coming. There's a new launch from Microsoft Teams today that starts to bring together more of the aspects that you need, and Google's coming out with more software solutions. So it's super important, though. Short answer.
That's interesting. There was part of your answer there links to another question I got a bit earlier, which was actually about headquarters. So, how should we think about those really iconic buildings like the HSBC building in Canary Wharf, or you can think of loads of other examples. I mean, do companies still need the kind of iconic HQ, or can you kind of in a world of remote work, can you make do with something much smaller in your view?
Yeah, I mean, iconic HQs they'll still be there, but they'll be smaller.
Right.
So, major companies, if you think about these huge buildings in London or New York or wherever, basically 5,000 workers come together in a huge building. That will become, not for every company, but for many companies, thing of the past. So you'll have a smaller iconic building where you bring together your team from time to time to get them to imbibe the company culture. It's a place to collaborate. It's a place to celebrate. It's a place to meet your colleagues and go out for a drink afterwards. It's a social thing. It's about being part of something. And so, and just to confirm that, in the past year, we've seen a significant number of companies dropping their headquarters and downsizing to our buildings. And they've gone from having lots of people in a city to a small number of people, and many people working remotely. That is hybrid working in action now. So people that can get out of leases do so and move to this more flexible way of working.
It's very interesting. I'm sure you get this question quite a lot, but we've had it, so I'm going to ask it to you. How does IWG now differentiate itself from WeWork, from both an employer perspective and a customer perspective?
Well, I think we are not different from WeWork. I mean, in terms of we may have had less publicity than WeWork, but overall, we're a company that's been established for more than 30 years. We're the market leader in this entire marketplace with more than 7 million users. We operate in 120 countries, so we're by far the market leader. We're very diversified into different customer groups and different geographies, as mentioned earlier. WeWork is a good company. But they were set up and financed in a different way, and that's the major difference. They're in a business. They're doing the same as we do, but they are more concentrated into city centres and CBDs than we would be. We're a lot more varied, but essentially same model, different financing. We're a public company as well, and we've made profits for many years. We've got to where we have over a much longer period of time. Both decent businesses.
Right, I've got two more questions for you, and they're both about you, I suppose, or at least how you see your business. What do you see as the biggest silver lining from the pandemic, and how do we retain that in the longer term?
Look, for us as a business, the silver lining is the forced adoption and the rapid growth that we will see in hybrid working in the future. So that for our business in the medium to long term, it just sets our business on a whole different growth trajectory. So there's a silver lining into the future. There is not a silver lining today because we have been, as a company, badly affected by COVID-19 for about 40% of our centres are in CBDs, and those have been badly affected by the effects of the crisis. So we've got a short-term issue that we've been dealing with and a long-term silver lining. I think, in answer to your question, thinking bigger picture rather than about our business, I think there is a huge silver lining for the workers of the world and the environment. Basically, workers have been liberated by this new way of working. And many, many people will benefit from the ability to work closer to where they live, be closer to their families, to get more of a social life in the future because they're not wasting an hour or two a day commuting. So that will be a big benefit. The environment will benefit. And those two things, I think, will be the sort of lasting benefit from this terrible crisis that we're going through today.
Very interesting. And then my final question really is, again, sort of about you. The question is, Well, I might paraphrase the question slightly. What's the biggest thing that you've learned from the pandemic?
Ah, well, always expect the unexpected. So, look, I've been in business for 45 years, and I thought I'd seen everything, and then this pandemic came along, and we were well prepared, thankfully. But it's that ability to always be in permanent preparation for times of trouble, and we've used that throughout the past year, and the ability to continue to innovate as well during the crisis. So we haven't, we've done more innovation in the past 12 months than we've done in the last, I would say, 5 years, because we've had to rapidly change our business, and we've had to rapidly adapt to changing circumstances. And we've seen the best from our people, and we've seen huge productivity with a totally dispersed workforce. Sort of needs must. It drives a whole new spirit, and it's been exciting, tough but exciting, and as a company we've learned a lot.
Yes, it's amazing how when you sort of force people to innovate on the fly, it's amazing how much can really get done in a short space of time. Well, I'd love to carry on talking, but we have only got a very small amount of time left. So I would just like to say sorry again for not being visible. Blame my shoddy technology. And Mark, thank you very much for joining us, and I hope you enjoyed our conversation. I certainly did.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Callum. Yeah, very interesting. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.